let's talk about Corum, the Prince in the Scarlet Robe, which is the first three Corum novels, Knight of Swords, Queen of Swords, and King of Swords. There's a second trilogy which I haven't read, The Prince with the Silver Hand, The Boar and the Spear, The Oak and the Ram, The Sword and the Stallion. But this is the first Corum series, which I guess must be from the late 60s into the early 70s. I don't think this particular set from, I mean, the copyright is 1971 for probably for the whole collection, so I guess that's when the third one came out. They don't always give full copyright dates on these Moorcock collection books. This is a kind of classic entry into, so an early and in every sense classic for him, Moorcockian entry into the multiverse, or eternal hero stuff. Prince Corum is the last of a elf-like species, the Vadag, and his people are being killed by some evil humans, Mabden, and he falls in love with a Mabden, a human woman, and goes to war against Chaos, who've unleashed this hell on his people. And he gets up to all kinds of Moorcockian tricks and adventures, visiting other planes, meeting a companion, who in this case is Jerry O'Connell, a sort of Moonglum figure, or obviously similar name to Jerick Carnelian or Jerry Cornelius. He is the eternal companion to heroes, and he knows about his own existence. We get appearances from some of, and he helps Corum. He has a magic flying cat as well. We get a couple of Eternal Hero appearances. We get Ericos and Elric turn up at various points, and we fight Lords of Hell, and we meet Lords of Law. We meet strange beings who are beyond the balance and don't even obey the balance. It's big. It's high end in terms of explicitly discussing some of the philosophical stakes of law and chaos, which is a massive thing for Moorcock, and religion. It's one of the most explicitly philosophical, inverted commas, Moorcock books. I mean, Elric Stormbringer is up there too, but I'd say in a way this is much more explicit. There's fairly long sections discussing the merits of law and chaos, for instance. That is, for me, that's actually not something I find particularly interesting. I find it, it's not compelling or convincing or intellectually engaging. I think what is strong about Moorcock, and why I do with qualifications usually recommend him, is that his world building, his action, his imagination must be in the almost like the top 10 of fantasy writers. It's a specific subset. By world building, I don't mean Sandersonian world building. There's actually weird aspects where it's almost the opposite. He's very good at description. He'll have a beautiful description of a landscape, but partly because he has a very pulpy, rapid pacing, you don't know anything else about the place where you've gone, and so I often have very vague ideas of where on earth he's talking about, or what's going on. Corum doesn't have a map. The Elric books that are set in Elric's world do have a map, which helps, but this doesn't have a map, so and it's not Fantasy Europe explicitly in the way that Hawkmoon is, so I've no idea where he is. He'll be like, oh, they're coming from the east. I'm like, oh, okay, I thought they were coming from the west. He'll say, oh, we went to this place, and you'll get a description of one thing, but I don't know what the rest of the place looks like. The geography basically for me is incredibly vague. But I don't hold that too much against Moorcock. By world building, I mean imaginative world building of stuff that's there, weird, crazy ideas. It's a great influence on Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 for some of its kind of more baroque and bizarre imaginations. I'd recommend it as a pacey and rapid and imaginative series with a hero who is amongst Moorcock's more attractive, less annoying. Frankly, he's also angsty. I think that's the thing you can't get away from, that Moorcock, and this is part of a sort of worldview issue that I find hard to sympathise with personally. But there's a kind of strong depressed nihilism. Some people will be like, great, I'm going to go and buy that straight away. But a strong depressed nihilism about these heroes who try to do good and maybe do some good, but maybe that good in other guise would be seen as evil, and everyone has to suffer. Everything always goes wrong. Everything's terrible nearly all the time. You try to scrape out just a small amount of happiness from a hellish world, and there's probably some degree to which this uh, reflects. I'm sure it reflects some of Moorcock's views now. I don't know, but I'm sure some of this reflects Moorcock's views as a young man in the 60s and 70s, and an attempt to deal with both the counterculture, which, if you were to just read a lot of his books straight, you would be like, well, he seems like he must agree with the counterculture, except he doesn't, because he's constantly worried about the undermining of law by chaos, but also aware that law can be stultifying or difficult as well. He tries to deal with that stuff, as I say, I think in a fairly shallow way. His action is usually brief because it's pulpy. This is three short novels. Remember already. This is your Lord of the Rings. Moorcock would hate slash love the comparison because of his bizarre sense of superiority to Tolkien. But yeah, he's very good at writing short, enjoyable action scenes. They're kind of very dramatic, usually very bloody. It's very much in a spaghetti western style. Let's say, let's put it that way. His writing is of mixed quality. His action is good. His basic ability, his description can be very good. His basic ability to just move the plot along very rapidly has costs. I think sometimes it can make it harder to invest in what's going on, because you're like, I don't really know where this is or what's happening. But it's good. His dialogue, I think, is weak. I do have a regular correspondent on my channel, well, one of the friends of the channel, who would argue and has argued that this is a reflection of a tribute to your Conans and your Lovecrafts and others who go for short pulpy dialogue. I mean, and it's interesting. Lovecraft often does go for that, where there is dialogue in the midst of very baroque prose. There's kind of very quick dialogue. Conan certainly, somewhat Fafnir and the Grey Mouser as well. And maybe that's right. You may enjoy it more than I do. I think there are technical issues to do with his dialogue, which I think render it weak. But it's my least favourite bit of reading. I'm happy to read the sophomoric philosophy than I am to read the the dialogue. But yes, I'm often left weirdly ambivalent by Moorcock. This is not a detailed system of rating, but my Goodreads ratings, I think, for Hawkmoon, the first four books went 2 star, 2 star, 3 star, 3 star. The for Elric, the first three longer collections of novellas went 3 star, 4 star, 4 star, and here it's 3 star, 4 star, 3 star. I think for these novels, uh, I'm often left in an odd position where I think these are good and I've enjoyed them. You know, even those 2 star Hawkmoons I thought had some redeeming features, but I it's a bit rich, it's a bit ripe. Um, there are technical flaws in my opinion, in my judgment, and there's a worldview which I find very hard to like. On the other hand, there's such endless imagination, and there's some really clever literary interplay with all these worlds connecting. A very early detailed literary multiverse, not the first literary shared universe or multiverse or extended universe or whatever, but a very early super developed interleaving one where you have lots of books that kind of connect and play on different themes, and it is successful on the whole. And so I'm certainly thinking, yeah, I think the next ones I'll move on to are probably Erico's The Eternal Champion cycle, Kane of Old Mars I've had good recommendations for, and I'm big into the idea of the planetary romance and Mars as a vehicle of particular kinds of storytelling. And I think the other one I was interested in is probably the Cornelius Quartet, the first Jerry Cornelius collection. Tell me what you think, if you're a Moorcock fan, should be next on the list in the comments, and tell me your thoughts about Corum, and particularly about the Prince and the Scarlet Robe, and I will see you next time.